Hello, friends. Good to see you as always. Yeah, a little quick Sunday stream here. I know I wasn't here Friday or Saturday. DB went live Friday, and again, usually when he does a live show, I tend to not do one just to not dip into either of our audience pools or anything like that. And then Saturday, I was like, all right, no, whatever. Let's wait till Monday. But I did a report earlier today that you can read on Touchdown Wire for USA Today. Did some more digging into the Courtland Sutton situation. He told DNVR, media company in Denver, by the way, great content that they have. So credit to them for getting the exclusive on this. He told DNVR that he was going to be attending Broncos minicamp, attending their mandatory minicamp. And so at the time of that, I was like, all right, if he's attending mandatory minicamp, some progress must be being made into maybe him getting a new deal, or maybe, he's just trying to, be civil and earn it that way. We'll see. But so he confirmed that he was going to be at Broncos mandatory minicamp a few days ago. I want to say that was on Thursday night or Friday night. And so I did a little bit of digging. I was like, all right, let me, talk to some people. And I reached out to a source. It was like, hey, scale of 1 to 10, what are the odds that Courtland Sutton gets traded or is wearing a different uniform this year? And he said maybe a 2. And so, okay. That to me all but puts any potential Steelers talk to rest on Courtland Sutton. And in continuing conversations, Courtland Sutton just wants to get back to football, back to the football side of things. And things with the Broncos are, I'm told, progressing slowly, but progressing nonetheless. He's still wanting a new deal, and he's still not entirely happy with how things have progressed, but they are, like I said, I'm told that they are slowly progressing. So it does appear that any potential Steelers trade for Courtland Sutton might be out the window. You could probably cross him off the list of receivers that the Steelers will continue to target at this point in time. And again, Sutton was one of those guys where I've said it since the draft, like that's probably the biggest realistic name for the Steelers in terms of trying to get a legitimate number 2 guy, or a 1A, 1B, whatever the situation would have been. There's a lot of overlap, a lot of connective tissue with Sutton in Pittsburgh. Obviously, Russell Wilson being his quarterback for the past 2 years, and him and Russ have a really good relationship. And 2, he had a career high 10 touchdowns last year with Russ as his quarterback. It was more than he had when he was a Pro Bowler in 2019. And 2, or on top of that, Zach Azzani, the Steelers' new receivers coach, was the Broncos receivers coach from 2018 to 2022. So there was a lot of overlap, a lot of connective tissue where it made sense to, connect the dots on, okay, if Courtland Sutton's going to be traded, Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons. But it does seem that he will be staying put in Denver, at least for the time being. And again, it's not impossible that something happens, but it does seem very unlikely at this point. Unless something drastic happens, it does seem very unlikely that Courtland Sutton will be a Steeler, or, any other team for that matter besides Denver at this point. What's up, JB? Hope the weekend's going well. Yes, yeah, it's going pretty well. Can't complain. Appreciate y'all tuning in. No need for Courtland once Ayuk is a Steeler. They might just need to really hone in on that at this point, man. Which, again, I'm sure that they haven't completely given up on that. It's just I don't think the 49ers are still really taking realistic calls for Brandon Ayuk. And again, I don't have any sort of insider info when it comes to that. That's just me taking a guess and saying, yeah, they're probably not going to trade him. They're probably, unless they're offered, okay, we'll give you 2 first-round picks and X player here, like then maybe they would listen. But again, I think that they're really focused on trying to win a Super Bowl this year, and I don't think Brandon Ayuk will be traded in 2024. That's just been my thoughts on it ever since since the draft ended. Like once a deal didn't get done for Ayuk during the draft, I didn't foresee one taking place for the reasons I just laid out. They're going to try to run it back one more time with this core. Would I like something to get done for Brandon Ayuk? Yeah, obviously, but I just don't foresee that happening in 2024. Could it happen next year? Maybe, but as of right now, I don't think that it'll happen. Not this season. But yeah, again, I know that Courtland Sutton has been a name that a lot of people, myself included, have labeled as like one of the more realistic targets for Pittsburgh in terms of getting, a quote unquote big fish wide receiver. And again, for all of the connective tissue reasons I've laid out with Russell Wilson, Zach Azani, obviously the Steelers still need another receiver outside of George Pickens for, to be a boundary perimeter receiver. And right now, I mean, Van Jefferson is still the guy that would have that role. And no disrespect to Van Jefferson, but that's not the most ideal situation if you're the Steelers. So now that leaves Pittsburgh with, okay, if they keep trying to hone in on the 49ers to get Brandon Ayuk, okay. Or if they, I don't know, what's left. They reportedly reached out to the Seahawks, presumably about DK Metcalf. Maybe that's not completely out of reach. Perhaps that happens. But if not, again, it comes back to those fallback options that we've talked about. Treylon Burks, John Mechie. Doesn't appear that Darius Slayton's going to be traded either. So, I mean, that's another name you could probably take off the list. So those fallback options that we as fans were hoping wouldn't need to become more realistic. They are becoming not just realistic, but likely in terms of the guys that they try to get. George, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Should they try out Hakeem Butler again? No, I don't think so. Nothing against Hakeem Butler. Again, he's had 2 consecutive really nice years in the, I guess last year it would have been the USFL and now the UFL. He's played well in that league, but I don't think that that's your big answer in terms of finding a legit number 2 guy. I think his ceiling in the NFL would be more of a depth guy that gets a lot of red zone targets. I don't necessarily think that he'll be a go-to target at the NFL level. So, just my overall thoughts on that. And look, it's those other guys in free agency available still. Michael Thomas has also been labeled as a guy that maybe the Steelers bring him in on a flyer. I really hope that doesn't come to fruition. Like Michael Thomas hasn't been good since 2019. And if that's who you're hoping is going to be your number 2 receiver, I have some real trepidations about that. I would much rather them trade nothing to get Treylon Burks. Give him a 7th round pick, call it a day. Bet on the upside of a guy who's still only 25, who's a former 1st round pick, physically is very impressive athletically. Again, I don't expect Treylon Burks to all of a sudden become an 80 reception guy, but can he be a number 2 boundary receiver and like a 3rd or 4th target in the offense? Yeah. Because again, I mean, Pat Freiermuth's going to get a ton of looks. Roman Wilson will get a nice number of looks. Treylon Burks doesn't have to be the number 2 target, but he would be a better option opposite of Pickens on the boundary than Van Jefferson would be. Sutton never seemed likely, in my opinion, if you throw a rookie quarterback out there without a semi-competent receiver. Yeah, I mean, I get that to an extent. The Broncos do have like a collection of guys on the roster already where, they drafted Troy Franklin. They have Tim Patrick. Who else do they? They brought in Josh Reynolds, Lil Jordan Humphrey. So, I mean, Outside of Sutton, it's nothing too impressive. So I can agree with you to an extent on that point in terms of like them having a less than impressive wide receiver room outside of Sutton. So most you would trade for an option like a Mechie, Robert Woods, Traylon Burks. How much would you do for DK Metcalf? For Mechie, for Robert Woods, Traylon Burks, it shouldn't take much. Like you look at John Mechie's numbers last year. I think he had 16 catches. You shouldn't have to give up more than a day 3 pick in like the following year's draft. Like if they can trade a 2026 draft pick for John Mechie, do it. Sure. Robert Wood, I don't need to hear about Robert Woods anymore, man. Like he's like 33. He's an old guy. I don't need to hear about Robert Woods. If Robert Woods ends up being the trade, again, that's a dude predominantly a slot guy. That just doesn't make sense to me. I think that Traylon Burks at this point is probably the guy I would pay attention to. And for, like, if I'm the Titans, I know I want to move him. They've kind of tanked his value by themselves by bringing in a bunch of different guys where they signed Calvin Ridley and signed Tyler Boyd. So it's very evident like Traylon Burks isn't a top 3 receiver on that depth chart. So they kind of tanked the value with the way that they went about this offseason. If the Steelers call and say, hey, we will give you a 7th round pick for Traylon Burks, I feel like that could get the job done. Give them one of the picks that the Eagles gave you for Kenny Pickett and call it a day. Now, in terms of DK Metcalf, again, I think that you would really have to look at how the market has gone this season for receivers. And Deontay Johnson was traded for a day 3 pick and a player. Jerry Jeudy went for 2 day 3 picks. DK Metcalf is better than Jerry Jeudy. I think he's physically more impressive than Deontay Johnson. I don't necessarily think he's a better wide receiver than Deontay Johnson, though. So he gets more name value, name recognition because, he's, the guy who's built like a Greek god and is big and is strong and, makes more of like the highlight type catches downfield. But like overall as a wide receiver, I think Deontay Johnson's a better wide receiver than DK Metcalf. So he would probably bring back something similar to what Deontay Johnson would. I think that it would probably be like, if they offered Seattle like a 4th round pick and maybe a conditional, like additional pick, depending on what he does on the field this season, that might be able to get the job done. But I think that DK Metcalf is more physically impressive, and that gets him a lot more talked about in league circles than his actual. Again, I'm not saying DK Metcalf is a bad receiver. He's not. He's a good receiver. I just think that he might be a little bit overrated, where a guy like Deontay Johnson is underrated, if that makes sense. So I think that if you said, okay, 4th round pick along with a conditional pick, depending on statistical numbers, and then I don't know, maybe like a more underutilized player if you want to send one back. How did Denzel Mims go from a 2nd round pick to the bottom of our lackluster receiver room? It happens in the NFL, man. Doesn't matter where you get picked. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. In terms of the chances that you get, it matters. Like if you're a 1st round pick who, a team cuts after 3 years, you'll get picked up relatively quickly and given at least one more chance. If you're a 6th round pick who gets kind of tossed to the wayside after 2 years, there's no guarantee you'll get another shot. So the status of that matters a little bit. But in terms of talent, man, like we see it all the time. Like Laquan Treadwell was a 1st round pick of the Vikings. Where the hell's he now? That was only a few years ago. Jalen Reagor was a 1st round pick. Sometimes things just don't work out. This is what it is. So we'll see. I mean, Denzel Mims hasn't done anything horrible to stick out to me, like during OTAs or anything, but he hasn't like done anything like really pop. So we'll see more about him during like training camp around that time. But yeah, went to a bad situation in the Jets. So I mean, some of that can be attributed to where he went, sure, but man, he's still got a lot to prove himself. Brandon Ayuk to Steelers talks have come back to life. We'll see, man. Apparently, he's reportedly seeking $30 million a year. Again, you don't want to be the team who's last to pay your guys, because then you're going to have situations like this. If the 49ers, apparently he turned down a deal that would have given him $26 million a year. I think that's what the number that Steelers now reported. Now, had they offered that to him maybe, a month ago, maybe he gets done. But then you see a Justin Jefferson get $35 million, and you see Amon-Ra and AJ Brown both get paid. We've talked about it plenty of here. That number then starts to go up. You want to be the team that gets ahead of the market and pays your guys. Like at first, yeah, that number might seem big, but when you set the market, other teams are going to have to continue to reset the market to keep their guys around. And then your contract ends up looking like a bargain. Ask the Chiefs. Ask Buffalo. Like right now, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, I don't even think they're in the top 5 of annual average money for contracts. They're 2 best quarterbacks in football. But again, when you're the first to take care of your guys and pay them, then other teams are going to, other quarterbacks, when their time comes, are going to say, okay, I want at least what he got. And it's probably going to cost you a little bit more. And that's another reason why, like, every year we see, oh, he's the highest paid X position in NFL history. Well, yeah, we see that every year because that's how contracts work nowadays. Like, that's not that impressive anymore. Because the way that the NFL works, every year a guy's going to become the new highest paid at his position. That's just usually how things work. Like when the CeeDee Lamb contract gets done, I won't be surprised if it's like at the same level of Justin Jefferson. Like if he hits free agency next year, I wouldn't be surprised if a team gave him $35 million a year, or like slightly more. I don't even mean a million, like a couple 100,000 more than Justin Jefferson, just to be able to say, yep, I'm the highest paid not quarterback in NFL history. So I can definitely see something like that happening. But again, you don't want to be the last one to have to pay your guy. I'm delusional enough to think that we get CeeDee Lamb. It would be nice. I did see this. I was going to save it for tomorrow's show. Maybe we'll save the discussion about it, or we'll see. But Bleacher Report proposed a trade for the Steelers where they send George Pickens and a second-round pick to Dallas for CeeDee Lamb. And I saw a bunch of people who were like, oh, Pickens is better anyway. First of all, no. No, he's not. And second of all, while that would leave Pittsburgh like pretty to a better degree, in terms of receivers, they'd still be in the same spot roughly with still needing a second receiver. I would still do it. Just because CeeDee Lamb is that good of a receiver. I love George Pickens, but like that's a trade I would make. And again, yeah, you'd still need a second receiver, but then like if they were to do the Treylon Burks trade and also get like a trade just a 7th round pick for Treylon Burks, then you have CeeDee Lamb and Treylon Burks as compared to George Pickens and Van Jefferson. That's an upgrade to me. And again, it was just hypothetical. Look, a lot of this, for myself included, everybody in my line of work, it's June 9th. Okay, there's going to be a lot of hypothetical articles, pieces that come out from Bleacher Report, from ESPN, from SB Nation, from USA Today, because it's June 9th. Okay, it's speculation season. It's okay. What are some realistic things that could happen that we could kind of piece together and get people talking? It's part of the business. On June 9th. So I definitely don't fault anybody for that type of stuff. And I think that there's like I said, a bunch of Steelers fans who are like, oh, that's so stupid. Pickens is better than CeeDee Lamb. Well, first of all, no, he's not. Second of all, it's not stupid when you can get a one of the top 3 receivers in the NFL. Never a bad idea if you can do that. Now, obviously, if there's like, oh yeah, trade your next 3 first-round picks for CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, don't do that. But George Pickens and a second for CeeDee Lamb, I mean, That's pretty fair to me. And again, I love George Pickens. I highly, highly doubt that trade would happen. Again, it was a hypothetical type of thing, but just something to talk about, CeeDee Lamb is easily wide receiver one if he comes here. Dallas might extend him. Dallas has been completely idiotic all offseason. They have made almost zero external signings. They've lost a lot of players, mostly to Washington, because a lot of those guys followed Dan Campbell to the Commanders once he got that job. So they've done nothing to make themselves better. And they've also not extended Dak Prescott, not extended CeeDee Lamb, haven't done anything with Michael Parsons. So Dallas has done nothing this offseason. They should extend him. He's very good. And I do think that he's the more likely one that they will extend. Like, I think that this is Dak Prescott's last year as a Cowboy. I think that ship's kind of sailed where they're not going to get a deal done. He'll go play elsewhere for a lot of money. I think it'll be similar to a Stafford type situation. Because I think Dak is good. And nowadays, there's been plenty. I shouldn't say plenty. There's been a few other instances where people point to a deal that gets done and say, oh, kind of like Matthew Stafford. Like Kirk Cousins is the one that comes to mind where he's been very good, but hasn't had all that much playoff success, but has been a good quarterback. Now he's going to a team where he can, win, and that's good. So the Cowboys have just been very dumb this offseason, and none of it has screamed of a team that is trying to win a Super Bowl now. It feels like a team that's caving in on itself. And yeah, like I said, if I'm picking which one I think gets signed, I think it'll be Lamb first, and then they let Dak walk, and then that'll open up the opportunity to also pay Michael Parsons. But I do think that Dak is playing somewhere else in 2025. Trading GP is a no-go. Great player on a cheap deal, and then we still have no wide receiver too. Look, man, if you can get a top 3 receiver and upgrade, then I don't think it's a no-go. You're going to pay Pickens eventually anyway. I would happily pay CeeDee Lamb before I pay George Pickens. Again, Pickens, good player. CeeDee Lamb, better player. Comfortably a better player. So I got no problem if that deal were to come to fruition. I don't think it will. Again, that's very highly hypothetical. There's been no sort of reports of the Steelers reaching out to Dallas or anything like that. So, but again, in this hypothetical, would I trade George Pickens in a package to get CeeDee Lamb? If that was the only way to get CeeDee Lamb, yes. Yes, I would. Do you think CeeDee Lamb would be where he is today if he had Kenny Pickett throwing them the ball? Look, guys, there's plenty of hypotheticals you can toss around. Would CeeDee Lamb's numbers, would he have had 135 catches last year if he was in the Steelers offense? Probably not. However, do I think George Pickens would have had 135 catches if he was in Dallas's offense? No, I do not. Okay? They go hand in hand. Look at every great wide receiver in the history of the NFL with very few exceptions. Obviously, like Larry Fitzgerald wasn't really dealt a good hand when it comes to quarterbacks. DeAndre Hopkins. But look at just about every other, Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame, All-Pro, wide receiver. What did they have usually? A good quarterback. So I hate the argument of, well, if he didn't have his quarterback, well, yeah, no shit. Plenty of other receivers you could say that about too. So I don't really buy into that argument. It's getting more and more likely that Ayuk may get dealt to us seemingly by the day. Look, man. I know that's been the hope, and I'm hoping for it too. I just don't think it'll happen. I think that Pittsburgh's going to have to scrap for a backup option here. And again, I'll happily eat my words if it is Brandon Ayuk. I just putting myself in the shoes of the 49ers, there's no reason why I would do it. I would make one last run at this thing and move on after this season if it doesn't work, Shouldn't have to give up George Pickens to get CeeDee Lamb. Do you actually think it's... No. Again, hypothetical thing came from Bleacher Report just to get people talking and whatnot. I don't think it's like a 0% chance that it happens, but like I don't think Again, nothing's been reported about Pittsburgh reaching out to Dallas about CeeDee Lamb. It was very much just a hypothetical piece put out. I don't think that they'll get CeeDee Lamb. It would be fun, but I don't think it would happen. Mentioned Godwin. What's your dart throw guess for what the draft capital for him would need to be hypothetically? For a guy like Chris Godwin, he's going to be a free agent in 2025. He had 83 catches for over 1,000 yards last year. Again, the market has kind of dictated what receivers go for. I wouldn't expect anything more than like a 4th round pick for Chris Godwin. Just based off what the market has said this offseason, maybe a 3rd round pick. But that's it. And if that would be like the absolute peak of like the biggest part of the deal. I don't think that he would go for anything crazy. So like a 4th round pick and maybe one of the 7s you got from Philadelphia. I think that that's realistic. Sure. A couple, an early day 3 pick and a late day 3 pick for Chris Godwin. Again, Deontay Johnson went for 1 day 3 pick and a starting player. So I think it would be somewhere in that realm. GP only had Kenny Pickett as quarterback. CD had Dak. Not a fair again, I hate that comparison because look at just about every Hall of Fame wide receiver. They had a great quarterback with them. So yeah, would CeeDee Lamb have caught 135 balls with Pittsburgh last year? No, probably not. But I don't think George Pickens would have caught 135 passes with Dallas either. Like CeeDee Lamb is a better player than George Pickens. He is a legitimate top 3 receiver in this league that can beat you at every single level and do all the things that you want from a route tree perspective, from a separation perspective, from a contested catch perspective. He can do everything you want in a number 1 receiver. George Pickens can do, a lot of good things. The downfield catches, the spectacular catches downfield. That's great. He still has a lot to improve on to be considered a legitimate, like top-notch number 1 receiver. If we get Lamb, I'm actually going to go crazy again. Nothing's been reported of the sort, just hypothetical talking. It would be cool. Don't get me wrong. I'd be very happy about it. And that would be quite the rabbit that Omar Khan could pull out of his hat. But nothing of the sort has been reported. And look, again, if you're Dallas, you got no reason to trade CeeDee Lamb right now. Because who else are you throwing? I mean, you got Brandon Cooks, sure, but CeeDee Lamb is, just led the NFL in receptions last year. Had almost 1,800 yards, 12 touchdowns. Like the dude was unreal. Legitimately one of the best seasons for a receiver in NFL history last year. So I don't think Dallas is going to be rushing to trade him. But if they don't get a deal done, he's going to be a free agent. Now they can use the tag on him. But if he says, no, I'm not playing on the tag, I don't care, then maybe it would be a tag and trade type situation. More likely, Brandon Ayuk then. There's been more reports coming out talking with the Niners about him. Again, I haven't seen any sort of reports of like Pittsburgh continuing to talk about it. Maybe I honestly haven't just been looking for it. If it happens, it happens. I'll be very happy about it. But, I will say this. Steelers Now, put out there. I don't know if they were the original source, but it was reported that he turned down $26 million a year. He wants 30. So if the 49ers don't give him that, then yeah, sure. Could they deal him? Then yes. I don't think it's a 0% chance that they trade Brandon Ayuk, but I do think it's very unlikely. Because again, just me talking from their perspective, I wouldn't do it. I just don't see any sort of reason for them to do it as of right now. Run it back one more time to try to win a Super Bowl with this loaded offense and defense that you have before you got to start paying guys before guys walk. Wouldn't mind getting an unproven young guy like John Mechie. He's in a crowded room, not getting a ton of targets in that offense. It won't be too expensive. I get that to an extent, but like they already have a bunch of guys that like either haven't been good in a while or were never great. I would rather see them take a big swing and try to get somebody. And look, to their credit, they have tried. It just hasn't resulted in anything. They've tried for Ayuk and potentially Debo. They've tried for Courtland Sutton. Tried potentially for DK Metcalf. I would like to, if this, to put a bow on it at the end of all the speculation, if it ends in a really good receiver, then great. But if not, then it's gonna stink if it's a subpar guy that they roll into the season with as the number 2. Only June, but AFC is fully loaded. Currently don't see any team that will be as bad in the AFC as the Panthers, Commanders, and Patriots were last year. Do you see any team in the AFC being that bad? There's only 2. I think there's only 2 teams realistically that I can honestly say, I guarantee they won't be in the playoffs. New England and the Raiders. I think that both of them are going to be bad. Now, Patriots have a bright future because I really like Drake May, but that's, this is year 1 of, a brand new offense, brand new head coach, rookie quarterback, rookie wide receivers. Defense could be nice, but that's going to take some time. So the Patriots and the Raiders, those are the 2, or no, Patriots and the Broncos as well. I'll throw in the Raiders too, just because I think their quarterbacks stink. So I think those 3 are ones that I would say 0% chance they're going to be playoff teams. Can say that with pretty good confidence. Broncos are going to be awful. Bo Nix is your quarterback, and if he's not, Zach Wilson is. Okay, have fun. Plus, your defense is very thin at talent. It's Pat Surtain and who for the Broncos. So I think that New England, I like what their future looks like, and I think that they could be a fun bad team where you can see them clearly progressing and getting better. And Drake May, I think, will be a really good quarterback at this level. But the Raiders have Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, and the Broncos have Bo Nix. Good luck. CD would have demanded a trade last year by week 8, being stuck with Kenny and his 13 career touchdowns. I get your point, but Kenny's the worst quarterback I've ever watched play. And I hear you on that. But once again, I've said this a few times now, so I'm going to stop repeating it. But just about every great receiver has a great quarterback. And again, yes, George Pickens had the unfortunate task of dealing with Kenny Pickett, and he played well, sure. Do I think that he puts up the numbers that CeeDee Lamb did with Dak Prescott? No, because CeeDee Lamb's just that good. Wouldn't mind if we paid Brandon Ayuk $30 million because we look at what the Titans paid Ridley. Yeah, the Titans paid Calvin Ridley stupid money. They overpaid for Calvin Ridley, who did not play all that great last year. The Steelers update, CT, ESPN. Okay, dude. When those are the sources that I'm supposed to trust, respectfully, those aren't updates. Those are, hey, I'm going to throw a dart at a board and hope it sticks. Come on now. CT, ESPN, all that stuff's funny. But again, I think that a lot of it is just hey, more fun than anything. NFL rumors, all of those aggregate accounts, I discount all of those. Would I like to see Brandon Ayuk as a Steeler? Of course. I just don't think it's happening, at least not in 2024. If after this year, the 49ers assess their situation and say, okay, maybe it would be a tag and trade type situation. Maybe he just walks altogether. So, but I don't think it happens in 2024. I really, really don't. Random hypothetical trade, James Daniels for Ayuk. I want Ayuk. Well, it would take more than James Daniels to get Brandon Ayuk, for sure. It would take James Daniels and a few draft picks to get Brandon Ayuk. But if you're saying, just include James Daniels in it, then yeah, sure, I get it. They drafted Mason McCormick. By the way, I see a lot of people who are like, oh man, but Mason McCormick can't be their option in 2025. What the hell do you think they drafted him for? They didn't take a third offensive lineman in their first 5 picks in the 4th round just to never play him. They drafted him for a reason. You think they just drafted a guy to never use him? We talk about, if you can have a younger option that you believe in rather than pay a boatload of money for a guy, then yeah, do it. They didn't take Mason McCormick just to be there as a backup for his entire career. And the fact that they aren't paying James Daniels, like that tells you all you need to know about what their plans are. It's pretty laid out. They drafted a guard in the 2024 draft. They didn't pay one of their current guards. That will leave a hole in 2025 where the 2024 draft pick can slide in. Now, I've seen a lot of people are like, oh man, Mason McCormick can't be their option. What the hell do you think they drafted him for? That's what it's going to be. So I don't know. I mean, again, if they trade James Daniels and a package to get Brandon Ayuk, I'll be happy. I like James Daniels a lot. He's a very good guard, but if they're not going to bring him back next year anyway, okay. It'll be somewhat of a trial by fire for Mason McCormick, but if it gets you Brandon Ayuk, I understand the reasoning behind it. I would rather keep James Daniels for this year so you don't have to put Mason McCormick in right away and he can spend a year, learning and getting better. But if you do a trade that gets you Brandon Ayuk and that's part of it, then sure, I get it. Oh, the 49ers need a guard. Yeah, there was another hypothetical trade. I can't remember who was involved in it, but someone had thrown in a guard as well. I think it might have just been another James Daniels trade. But hey, no, that's how it goes. I don't think it would be James Daniels and a 6th round pick for Brandon Ayuk. That's not how it goes. Because the importance of the position, like especially in today's game, where if you can get a top-notch receiver, they're going to cost more than a top-notch guard. That's just what it is. So yeah, you can throw in a James Daniels, but you're still going to have to give up, a decent draft pick to go along with it. I don't think it'll be a 1st-round pick, but like you said, James Daniels and maybe a 3rd. Okay, then we're probably talking. I still don't think that would get the job done. Like it would take a lot to get Brandon Ayuk, and rightfully so. He's very good. Don't want Daniels to go. Only thought of it due to their needs and not negotiate. Yeah, like James Daniels is going to get a big contract in the offseason. More than likely with another team. I doubt that the Steelers would all of a sudden start negotiating with him during free agency when they said, yeah, we're not going to, pursue an extension. That wouldn't make sense. So this is likely his final year in Pittsburgh. He'll get a nice contract next year. So, good for him. He's a good player. He's still only 27. So, I mean, he'll get a nice contract in the offseason. He'll get paid. And then, the Steelers will, again, my guess is, you drafted a guard in the draft this year for a reason to get ready when James Daniels goes. So my guess is that Mason McCormick will, at minimum, be given an opportunity to compete. ESPN is a very, look, man, no, it's not. Do they get some stuff right? Sure. But to call it a very reliable source, I'm not going to call ESPN a very reliable source. It's fun. It's goofy. And they get some stuff right, sure. But, it's not as if they're Adam Schefter. But yeah, just to recap everything real quick. Courtland Sutton made it known, appearing on a podcast for DNVR in Denver, that he would be at mandatory minicamp. I then did a little bit of digging, asking hey, what are the odds that he gets traded and is wearing a different uniform? And source told me a 2 out of 10. So while it's not impossible, it's very unlikely that he's going anywhere. And that's where we currently stand. So it appears that he can be a name that you cross off the list for the Steelers. And now, again, a lot of those options, maybe Treylon Burks, John Mechie, those are names you're going to really have to start paying attention to unless they snag a bigger name out of left field. Chris Godwin's a name that I threw out there and actually wrote about a couple days ago as to, a name that would make sense. So if they can get a guy like that, absolutely. But it does seem like you got to start, really looking at, okay, it might be Treylon Burks, it might be John Mechie. Those two are those are 2 names that you should keep circled. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. Steelers videos throughout the week. Go and read all the written content behindthesteelcurtain.com, SB Nation's dedicated coverage of the Steelers. I'm the deputy editor of the site. Read all the written work as well on USA Today. Read my head coaching rankings. A lot of people have read those. The numbers are through the roof on that, which is great. So I appreciate everybody who has read that. And I will be doing a top 32 assistant coaches in the NFL as well. That will come out within the week. So I'm making the list right now and kind of deciphering what order I want to put these guys in. So that'll be coming out this week as well. And again, if you're not already, subscribe to this channel. Steelers videos 5 days a week. Steelers show, Black and Gold Breakdown, which you're watching right now. Doing it 5 days a week. Usually Monday through Friday. But again, if DB is doing a show, I tend to back off a little bit because I don't want to poach any of his audience, and I don't want any of that crossover. So he did a show on Friday, which is very good. Go and watch it. He's recapping Steelers OTAs. So go and subscribe to Steelers_DB, which I assume most of you already are. So usually it'll be Monday through Friday, unless other programming is taking place and I don't want to counter program. So Monday through Friday, Black and Gold Breakdown for the rest of the off season. Between the hours of like 7:30 and 8:30 is usually when I start these. But again, did the show today because I didn't do one Friday or Saturday. Again, I didn't do one Saturday to recap just because I was didn't feel like doing a show yesterday. So got the information that I wanted on Courtland Sutton. Figured that I would do a show today, tell you guys about it, kind of lay some groundwork in terms of where Pittsburgh currently stands. Funny enough, we're just talking about CTESPN, and Michael Beck quoted their tweet from last night. Yeah, it said the Steelers continued to pursue a trade with Brandon Ayuk. Well, look, would love to see it. Would love to see it. But I'm not going to hold my breath on it. I'll say that. I don't think I sound like a broken record here, so forgive me, but from the 49ers perspective, it makes zero sense to trade Brandon Ayuk. None. Make one last run at it with the Super Bowl, have as many weapons as you possibly can. In today's NFL, you can't have enough weapons. So I wouldn't trade him if I was the 49ers. So that's just kind of where things stand with the Steelers and Courtland Sutton. And we'll see what they do at receiver going forward. But again, subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to subscribe to the channel. We're getting closer to 1,100 subs after getting to 1,000 last weekend. So quickly getting a lot more of y'all in here on a daily basis. So I do greatly appreciate it. Very much so. So I will see you guys tomorrow. What will we talk about? I don't know yet. We just kind of figured that out as we go. It's June 9th. So there'll be a lot more, speculation season, a lot of stuff like that. And then later on, I would say probably next week to look out for the Steelers draft show, and then eventually the all-time favorite Steelers show, which will both be very fun. The draft show, I'm going to get a bunch of different Steelers content creators together. We're going to do an all-time draft. That'll be great. The favorite Steelers of all time show might just be me, just kind of talking about my favorite Steelers. Obviously, we'll have an open forum with everybody in the YouTube chat, the Twitter chat as well. So tune in for that. Don't know exactly the dates for it yet, but it'll be next week at some point. Wednesday, I'll be at minicamp, mandatory minicamp. So I'll let you know what I see there. I'll do a written report about it as well. So again, follow all the written stuff at Behind the Steel Curtain. Subscribe to the channel. Wednesday will be the mini camp show. So subscribe. I will see you guys tomorrow on the Monday Black and Gold Breakdown. Have a good night. Take care of yourselves. I'll talk to you soon.